G'day everyone, another video today. This is a question I've been getting asked quite a bit, is a video about my camera setup. So I'm just going to focus on my main camera, and it is a Sony RX10 IV. And I'm just going to say straight off the bat, in my opinion, this is the single best hunting camera out there. In terms of all-round versatility, zoom, low light, everything like that combined, I don't think that there is a better camera out there than this at the moment, and that's why I own it. And I have done for, I can't remember exactly when I bought it, maybe a couple of years ago. I basically bought it as soon as they released it, and if this broke tomorrow, I would buy another one tomorrow. That's how good it is. So same as my other videos, I've got myself a little cheat sheet here just to run through some pros and cons. So straight up, first pro is versatility. You've got not a massive camera, so I'll show you with it extended and you can sort of see the size of it. So that's as big as it gets. I can't remember the exact weight, but I would assume that the camera would be around a kilo in weight. So it's not the lightest camera in the world, but it's also not the heaviest camera in the world. The zoom range, full frame equivalent, is 25 to 600 millimeters, which I believe is around 25 times optical, which doesn't sound like a heap, but it's also got a 1-inch sensor. So if you look at every single camera on the market and try and find something with that size sensor and that zoom range, pretty sure you're just going to be left with this camera. The aperture range is f2.4 to 4, so again, lets in a lot of light at all zoom ranges, and it just makes it an extremely versatile camera. The second pro I've got here is basically similar to the first in terms of what I just said about the sensor size, but I've got sensor size written down, and mainly because most super zoom cameras, like your Nikon P900s and B700s and Canon SX60 and all that, all have super tiny sensors. Probably sensors not much bigger than in your smartphone. So when you step up to something like this, the sensor size is probably about twice the size, and it allows a lot more light to come in. So this camera here, and I've compared it, like my brother's got a P900, and in lower light conditions, this just eats it up. There's just no comparison. It's night and day. You'll be able to hunt and video your hunts a lot longer in the day or earlier in the morning than with basically any other bridge camera in this sort of range, you know, like the B700s and P900s, etc. Because of that, another pro on my list is the low light ability, and as I've just been saying, it's quite incredible how much light this camera will let in, especially if you start to bump the ISO up. I can't remember the max ISO on it, but it's pretty high, and like I say, you can hunt with this camera and video with this camera a lot longer than most other cameras in the sort of class. Another pro is all the manual modes that you can run on it. So you've got full manual, you've got program, you've got shutter, priority, you know, all your normal modes. Very similar to a DSLR. You can run full manual for your photography side of things. You can shoot 4K, you can shoot slow-mo up to like, I think it's like 480 frames a second, might even be 960. Can't remember exactly off the top of my head. The quality does degrade. I've done a little bit of slow-mo with this camera, which you may have seen in the past on some of my videos, but I sort of just forget to use it. I should really use it more for some B-roll, but it's just one of those things. Just it's hard focusing on filming and hunting at the same time, and I normally end up focusing on more so the hunting side of it, and the video side of it's just like on the back burner. So I just get what I can get, but it is handy having all that capability there. So if I ever did want to work on some B-roll or some cool shots, some cool angles, slow it down, whatever, very good camera to do that sort of thing with. Next pro I've got on here is the customization on the buttons. So you can customize a lot of the buttons You just go through the menu and you can customize. Like I've got this set up in a way that works very well for me, and I'll probably get a bit of footage behind the camera and just show that, you know, in the works basically, just so you can see what I've done and why it works for me. But it's a good feature to have, being able to customize some of the different buttons to do exactly what you want it to do. So if you need to change anything really quickly, whether it be your focus mode or self timer for photos, whatever it may be, it's good having that option there. Another pro I've got is basically the spotting scope capabilities of this camera. So I don't have a spotting scope, and I don't feel the need to buy one, because for any assessment on animals, I can basically rely on this. And it's to do with one of the manual focus magnifiers that's within the camera, and I'll show you that. But it basically crops in, and you can't record it, but it can crop in on the screen. I've mentioned this in the videos before, but I'll show you guys that, what I'm talking about. And it's a very handy tool to judge antler length, or if you're a pig hunter, you might be able to tell whether it's a boar or a sow, or see how big a goat is if you're hunting billies, whatever. So it's another thing to add to the versatility side of things is with this camera, you don't necessarily need a spotting scope. And I've compared this with, and I can't remember the exact model of the Swaro, I think it was an STX 65, could be wrong, but it was one of the 65mm front objective Swaro spotting scopes, and this was better to evaluate a sambar on the side of the hill than the Swaro was at last light. So that really impressed me. Next pro I've got, and it's actually the last pro, and I've probably forgot quite a few, but the autofocus on this thing is ridiculously good. So I pretty much nearly always run this camera in autofocus. Sometimes I'll switch it to manual if I've got a deer or something in behind some shrubs, and cameras will often want to focus on the closer subject. So the way I've got this set up is I can easily switch to manual focus and get the focus dialed. But having the great autofocus on this is super handy most of the time, especially fallow deer hunting, anything out in paddocks or open country. I just run the autofocus. There's just no need to use the manual. The autofocus is very reliable, will track faces quite well, and just seems to work quite well. It's also got a touch screen, so you can touch the screen where you want it to focus, and that also works very well. So that's it for the pros that I can think of. Probably forgot something, but anyway, we'll move on to the cons. First con, compared to a full frame camera or even an APS-C sensor sized camera, this isn't as good in low light. So if you had, say, an A7 III or an A7S or any of those high-end Sonys, or the Canon 5D Mark III or 4 or whatever you're using, this isn't going to be as good. Sensor size is a lot smaller, but the camera itself also a lot smaller, and you don't have the hassle of having to change lenses, which I used to run a Sony a6300, and even though it was better in low light than this, I have more zoom with this, and it's just way more versatile for me. So, I mean, admittedly, I could have got better lenses for the a6300, like bigger lenses, but then you're starting to lug around a heap more weight and things get bulky, and if you want to get a wide angle shot, you've got to change your lens. And yeah, this camera really just ticks the bills. So that is a con, that the low light isn't as good as your higher end full frames or APS-C sensors, but all in all, as an all-rounder, I still think it's very good. Another con, some people might say it's a con. I see the zoom on it as pretty sufficient, but the zoom being only able to go to 25 times optical. A lot of people are used to the P900s, with the 83 times optical and whatever else they've got. But same thing, what you make up in zoom, you're sacrificing in sensor size. So, I mean, I'm calling it a con because I would love some more zoom, especially with that f2.4 to 4 in the same size sensor. If they release an RX10 IV, we may get a bit more zoom, not sure. But all in all, I still think I keep turning these cons around, but it's just hard not to love this camera the way it is. Okay, this is a true con, one that I will not turn around, and that is the screen. Okay, not only does the screen suck to view in sunlight, it's super dim, and I've got it on max brightness, and it's just still very hard to see. Anyone that owns a Sony camera will understand what I'm talking about. But probably the biggest thing for me is that it doesn't flip around. So a lot of cameras, you can flip the screen around so you can see yourself if you're vlogging or talking to the camera or whatever. This doesn't do that, and that absolutely pains me. And generally what I will do, if I'm talking to the camera, I will trust that the autofocus is working and, you know, just wing it. I'll just chat to the lens, hit record on the back here, and hope that it's got me in focus. To make sure that it's got me in focus, I'll normally watch back on the recording, make sure that I was in focus, and then go on about my hunting and, you know, do whatever I'm doing next. But that's definitely a con. If this screen flipped out, would be a massive positive. Another con is the fact that the screen, you can only touch it, like the touch screen function only works to focus. So you can't scroll through the menus or anything like that. You can't zoom in on photos or whatever using your fingers. So that's a bit of a downer as well. The last con I've got on the list is the menu. And the menu is a bit of a mess. Anyone that owns a Sony will be like, yeah, that's pretty fair. They have a lot of options inbuilt in their menus, which is great for customization and versatility and all those things, but the layout and the way it's set up makes them a little bit hard to navigate. The menu, you know, there's a lot going on there. I think from memory, I'll actually quickly tell you, so there's 6 top pages, and most of them have about up to 6 pages underneath them. So, you know, you're looking at over 50, 60 different settings all up, which is a lot that you can go through. But anyway, I'm going to get some footage behind the camera so I can show you guys what I was talking about before. And that's going to wrap up the video. Alright, so this is power up. So we've got the D heads there. I normally run 1/50 for my video setting, which is there. So the way I've got it set up, this top button here, that's my toggle between manual focus and autofocus. So at the moment it's autofocus. If I hit that, it goes to manual focus. And this is the magnifier I was talking about. So I can move that around with this touchpad at the back. But if I want to ace my focus, I just hit it in like that, and then focus rings at the front of the camera. So you can see it changing there. In manual, you only get a 4 times focus magnifier. In video mode, sorry. But if you switch this to manual, manual, watch this. And this is what I use to evaluate deer or whatever. So I can press it in, and then I can press it in again. So you can imagine that this is on base zoom too. You can imagine this on full zoom. We'll do it, stuff it. So it'll go to 600 mil. So where are we? So that's on his eye there. So we can, hang on, toggle that to manual focus. Alright, so we roughly focus there. This is a little bit hard to do, but alright, now watch this. So this is at 600 mil, 25 power equivalent. Now this is the point, so I could record at this point, but this is the point where you cannot record or take photos. But It's basically designed to get you crystal clear focus. So that's 5.3 times on top of that, and then 10 times. So, you know, we're right in the white of that stag's eye. I don't know how well that's showing up, but I mean, you can clearly see that's a long way in. So that's the feature I use for basically assessing animals, making sure it is an animal. You know, sometimes you'll get the odd stump that looks like a samba, and having that feature allows me to double check that it actually is a deer or whether it is a stump. So those sort of things are quite handy. And I'll quickly just show you this here is a bit broken, and I'll spin this around. I lost my lens hood the other day, so that normally would go on there because I ran over this camera. So that's another pro that I forgot, and that's how tough it is. And if I remember, I'll chuck in some photos as well, because I've had this thing in the snow. It's been rained on, been run over. You can see the damage where I've run it over, where this is actually lifted up, and I've just jammed some blue tack in there. It's certainly done the rounds out in the field, and yeah, you can see that it's a bit beat up. But like I said, if this thing ever breaks, I'll be either waiting for the 5th version to come out, or I'll be just buying another one. That's how highly I think of them. Anyway guys, I hope that was somewhat interesting or helpful. If you have any questions about the RX10 IV, just drop a comment below. Cheers.